I was a press agent. We sometimes call that now a communications consultant. But my job was to publicize something. And what I was publicizing was the typical American house at the U.S. exhibition, and in particular, the kitchen. And so what went on here, the kitchen conference, it was my kitchen. Tomorrow in the New York Times, I read a memoir of the sometimes madcap preparations for this debate. So I won't go into great detail. But I do remember you had the opportunity of seeing the RCA exhibits film. What happened was Nixon went into that RCA studio as Mr. Nice Guy. He was the host of the exhibition, and although he had a hardline image, he wanted to be nice and friendly, and that was his general attitude. And Khrushchev wiped up the floor with him. He really went after him. Occasionally broke into a smile or something, which you saw. But when Nixon came out of that 15 minutes, he looked pretty glum. And the typical American house was not on the route or the agenda. So he came out and he was wondering, you could see he was wondering, where do I get back at this? Because I'm being followed by the entire press entourage that came from the United States, as well as all these Soviet journalists. And the Americans referred to the two of them as Nick and Dick. And the Soviet press didn't like that at all. So they came out of the RCA studio where Nixon was the loser and looking for something he always used to do a lot, a comeback. And I yelled at Major Don Hughes, his military aide, this way to the typical American house. Hughes grabbed Nixon, steered him toward the house. Nixon ushered Khrushchev alongside, and they went into this house, which which my client built, with a walkway through it, right through the middle of the house, and we call it the Splitnik. But the problem was, as they ushered the two men into, or the two men ushered themselves into the house, followed by the crowd of reporters, that the press of the crowd would push them right through the house and out the other side. Fortunately, I had foreseen that, a good press agent, and I had a friend, Ambassador Gilbert Robinson, who's here today, who was able to help me beforehand arrange the disappearance of a portion of a fence that kept back a crowd. And so that crowd spilled in from the other side of the house, trapping the two principals in the middle of the house. This is known in military affairs as logistics. Nixon saw his opportunity immediately for a comeback, took Khrushchev by the arm and leaned into the kitchen, which was separated by a little fence, and proceeded to say, this is a kitchen, and it's a typical American kitchen, and it's a way that we can save housewives time and energy. And Khrushchev immediately said, we have all this. And then Nixon said, but this is a $14,000 house, which is paid for over 30 years, guaranteed by the mortgage guaranteed by the government. An ordinary steel worker can afford this. And the look of absolute disbelief on the face of Khrushchev was apparent. And he said, yeah, we have workers who can afford $14,000 for a house too. And he was sarcastic. And then they went at it. My problem was I was there in the kitchen. There was the greatest event of my life taking place right in front of me. And The press corps was all in the back, and nobody could hear. And it was not being filmed or recorded. And who was going to believe me? And so I looked around, and I saw Harrison Salisbury of the New York Times trying to get into the kitchen. And the Russian guards wouldn't let him. And I said, refrigerator demonstrator. And Salisbury, who spoke Russian, interpreted that to the guards, and they let him in. He sat down on the floor in the kitchen right in front of the two men and began taking the notes for the pool, for all the other reporters. Well, that worked. And so the next thing, the AP photographer, Hans van Nolde, good photographer, was out there and couldn't get in. I explained he was the garbage disposal unit man. But the Russians, there were no dopes. They said, where is this unit? And we didn't have a garbage disposal unit. So he took the extreme act, the photographer, taking his camera and throwing it over the fence into the kitchen, into my arms. And so I looked through, and I was no photographer then or now. And I saw Nixon gesticulating, and I clicked the shutter, and threw the thing back over the fence. And the AP man yelled, "You had your hand over the aperture, idiot." And he threw it back, and Nixon and Khrushchev were having their debate at the time, and I'll never forget the look I got from Khrushchev, you know, like, well, because the camera almost hit him. Anyway, I finally took the picture, and you'll be able to see it in the New York Times tomorrow morning. It was not the most famous one by Elliot Erwitt, of another photographer who fought his way in, of Nixon jabbing his finger into Khrushchev's chest. It was a more general picture, but it did get in the washing machine. So it was a picture of Nixon and Khrushchev and some bureaucrat who had forced his way past Mikoyan and Kozlov and got to the front of the picture. And I couldn't crop him out without cropping out the GE equipment that I was pushing. So I included a rather wide picture. Many years later, I went back to Moscow with Nixon as one of his speechwriters. And as we came in to meet the Soviet premier, there was that pushy bureaucrat again. Only this time he was Nixon's counterpart, Leonid Brezhnev. And Nixon went like that too. Anyway, so that was the setting and how it happened.